I guess I should have seen it coming, but when the words finally left my mother's mouth, they cut through me deeper than anything she'd ever said. I was 63 years old, standing in the middle of a restaurant I paid for, holding a birthday cake for the father I adored, and still, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not even part of this family." All my life, I'd been the fixer. The daughter who stepped in when bills needed paying. The daughter who helped raise nieces and nephews while their parents figured themselves out. The daughter who never complained, who never asked for anything back. And yet, on the one night I tried to celebrate my own father the way he deserved, everything I thought I knew about my family fell apart. What happened after that moment changed my life forever. I've spent most of my life being the one everybody leaned on. You know, the person in the family who steps in before things fall apart. The one who holds everything together while everyone else panics, argues, or walks away. For as long as I can remember, that's who I've been. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being something I chose and became something everybody expected. I didn't grow up planning to be the strong one. It just sort of happened. Maybe it was because I was the oldest. Maybe it was because I was the quiet child, the one who listened more than I spoke. Or maybe it was because I was the only one who paid attention when things in our home didn't feel right. Whatever the reason, it stuck. And the title followed me all the way into adulthood like a shadow that never quite left my side. My father, Henry Collins, he used to tell me, "Camille, you always see more than you say." He said it with this soft pride in his voice, like he admired it. My mother, though, she had a different way of seeing things. She would say, "Don't start trouble, Camille. Just help where you can." And even though she said it like advice, it always sounded more like an order. A gentle command wrapped in a mother's tone. Growing up, that difference between them shaped me. My father made me feel seen. My mother made me feel responsible. Those two things mixed together gave me this quiet urge to always step in, always fix, always carry the weight for everyone else. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for help. I didn't even think I had the right to. By the time I turned 50, I was everybody's emergency contact. My siblings, Lord, they had a talent for chaos. My brother Marcus, always on the edge of losing a job or making a bad financial decision. My sister Denise, dramatic in everything she did, from breakups to business ideas that burned out as fast as they sparked. And then my youngest brother, Paul, sweet, but so used to being rescued, he didn't know what self-responsibility even looked like. And in the center of it all was me, the calm one, the steady one, the fixer. I didn't think much of it at the time. In fact, I thought it meant something good. I thought it meant I was strong, dependable, trustworthy. I took care of them because that's what family was supposed to do. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But as the years passed, I started noticing something. Everyone had gotten very comfortable with the idea that I'd show up. They didn't ask if I was tired. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't ask what it cost me emotionally or financially. They just called and I came. Like clockwork. Like a service, not a sister. And the saddest part was, I didn't realize how heavy that burden had become until much later in my life. You see, the only person in my family who seemed to genuinely appreciate me was my father. Even after my siblings grew up and moved out, I'd visit him regularly. I'd stop by on Sundays with pie from the bakery he loved, or sit with him on the porch while he told me stories I'd heard 100 times before. He'd always thank me for coming, like my presence was a gift rather than an obligation. Sometimes he'd hold my hand and say, "Camille, you've given this family more than you got back. Don't think I don't see it." He said it gently, like he didn't want to make me uncomfortable. But those words stayed with me. They carried a little truth I wasn't ready to face yet. My mother, on the other hand, had this way of making me feel like an outsider, even when I stood right beside her. I don't know if she meant to do it. Maybe she didn't even realize she was doing it. But there was always some small comment, some slight shift in her tone, some look that reminded me she expected more from me than from everyone else. I'd walk into a family gathering, And before I could even sit down, she'd hand me a dish towel or point toward a pot on the stove. Camille, stir this. Camille, fix that. Camille, can you run to the store? Meanwhile, my siblings sat on the couch arguing about sports or scrolling through their phones. I'd catch myself looking around sometimes, thinking, how did I get here? When did I become the one who had to keep everybody afloat? But then my father would smile at me from across the room, and somehow that made it all feel bearable. Like as long as he saw me, I could handle not being seen by anyone else. My father turning 78 that year felt like a milestone. A quiet, fragile reminder that time doesn't wait for anybody. I knew he wouldn't say it out loud, but I could tell he was getting tired. Not sick, not weak, just worn in that way older people get. Softer around the edges. Quieter in how they move. I found myself thinking about how much he had done for us over the years, how much he had endured, how much peace he deserved in whatever time he had left. And for once, I wanted to give something back. Not just to him, but to myself too. I wanted one good memory, a family moment without arguments, without obligations, without tension. So I decided to plan a birthday dinner for him. A real one. Something nice. Something gentle. Something worthy of the man who spent my whole life being my anchor when everybody else drifted. I booked a restaurant that had soft lighting and warm colors, the kind of place where you could hear every word without shouting over loud music. I wanted it to feel intimate, not stressful. I picked a menu I knew he'd love: slow-cooked short ribs, garlic mashed potatoes, fresh green beans, all the things he used to order when I was a little girl tagging along behind him on payday dinners. I even ordered a cake ahead of time and asked them to write, "Happy birthday, Dad," in this simple, elegant script. No glittery decorations, no loud colors, nothing gaudy. Just something thoughtful and clean. My father always appreciated simplicity. While I was planning everything, I felt this small flicker of hope inside me. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this dinner could bring my family together in a way I had never been able to before. Hope that maybe they would look around and realize how lucky we were to still have our father with us. Hope that my mother might soften for once and see what I was trying to create. But beneath all that hope was fear too. Because no matter how old you get, there's something about a mother's approval that still lingers deep in your chest. It doesn't matter how many accomplishments you have, how many degrees, promotions, or years of independence, one sentence from a mother can still shake the ground under your feet. And even after all these years, my mother's voice had that kind of power over me. But I pushed the fear aside. I told myself this wasn't about her. This was about my father, and about finally doing something that wasn't tied to expectation or obligation. Something that came from love. In the days leading up to the dinner, I found myself rehearsing little things in my mind. What I would say in a toast, how I would thank him, how I would look around the table and try to breathe in a moment that felt whole instead of fractured. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself imagine my family not as they were, but as they could be. A family sitting together. A family laughing. A family united. A family grateful. Just one night. One memory that didn't carry the weight of a lifetime. I didn't know then that this dinner, this attempt at healing, would become the night everything shattered. I didn't know that all the years I spent holding everyone together were about to come undone in a single sentence. I couldn't have imagined how quickly love can turn into something cold when resentment rises to the surface. All I knew, as I finalized the reservation and ironed the dress I planned to wear, was that I wanted to do something good, something kind, something that honored the man who had always seen me, even when everyone else looked right through me. I didn't realize that by trying to bring my family closer, I was walking straight into the moment that would change everything. And with that quiet hope still sitting in my chest, I picked up the phone to confirm the last detail of the dinner, completely unaware of the words that would soon cut through me like nothing I had ever felt before. I woke up the morning of the dinner with this nervous flutter in my stomach, the kind you feel when you want something to go right so badly, you're afraid to even breathe wrong. I must have checked my phone 4 times before breakfast, confirming the reservation, the cake order, the seating arrangement. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't a wedding or a corporate event. It was just a dinner, a simple birthday celebration. But the truth is, it meant more to me than I wanted to admit. I spent so many years trying to keep this family from falling apart that the idea of bringing them together, even for one evening, felt like a small miracle I wasn't sure I deserved to hope for. And yet, I hoped anyway. I ironed my dress slowly, smoothing the same spots twice even when they didn't need it. It was navy blue, soft to the touch, simple but elegant. The kind of dress that didn't draw attention, but still made you feel put together. My father always told me I looked good in blue, said it made my eyes look gentle. I don't know if that was true, but I held on to that compliment like a warm coat on a cold night. I left home earlier than I needed to, partly because I didn't want to be rushed and partly because being early made me feel like I had control of at least one thing in a world where I usually held everything together by the seams. The restaurant was quiet when I arrived. Soft music, warm lighting, linen tablecloths, candles that flickered gently without trying too hard. I walked through the space with the manager, making sure the table had enough room for my father's wheelchair if he needed it, though he insisted he was still strong enough to walk. I checked the silverware placement, the view from the windows, and the comfort of the chairs, small details only someone used to managing crises would notice. I guess old habits don't fade easily. I placed the wrapped gift beside my father's seat. It was a framed photo of the two of us sitting on the porch last summer, his hand resting on mine. He didn't know I had the picture printed and framed. I thought maybe it would bring him joy to see something simple but meaningful, something that reminded him of a time when life wasn't so heavy. I sat down for a moment, smoothing the tablecloth with my palm. For the first time in a long while, I felt a little proud of myself. Proud for organizing something beautiful. Proud for caring enough to try. Proud for making an effort that came from love, not expectation. But right as I started to breathe easily, I heard footsteps approaching. My mother walked in first. I stood to greet her, smiling gently, but the first thing she did was look around the room like it wasn't good enough. "Oh," she said, running her hand along the back of a chair, "you picked this place." Her tone wasn't outright cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the kind of tone that made you question your choices even when you knew they were fine. "Yes," I said softly. "I thought Dad would like it."
She didn't respond to that.
Instead, she picked up the menu and squinted at it like it offended her. I sat back down slowly, reminding myself that she had always been this way, hard to impress, quick to judge, withholding kindness like it cost her something. I told myself I wouldn't let one comment ruin the evening.
Not this time.
A few minutes later, my brother Marcus walked in, smelling like cologne he sprayed on too heavily in the car. He gave me a half hug that didn't land quite right and said, "Hey, Cam, this place is fancy." I laughed lightly. That was the idea. He raised his eyebrows. "Dad better appreciate this. I drove across town during rush hour for this, you know." I knew he didn't mean it as criticism, but it still stung a little. I used to drive hours for him, pay bills for him, bail him out when he didn't want Dad to know what he'd messed up. I never said a word about the sacrifices I made. And here he was, irritated over a 15-minute commute. I reminded myself to breathe. Denise arrived next, wearing a dress that sparkled under the warm lights. She kissed the air near my cheek and said, "So this is the place? It's cute, Camille. Kind of small, but cute." Then she added quietly, "I guess this is what we're going with." That one landed hard. I spent weeks thinking about every detail, not because I wanted praise, but because I wanted one moment, just one, where my family looked around and felt connected. But their comments settled around me like dust, creeping into the cracks I tried to seal shut. Still, I smiled. I told myself not to personalize it,
Not tonight.
Then the doors opened again, and my father walked in slowly, leaning on his cane. The second I saw him, something inside me softened the way it always does around him. I rushed over, took his arm gently, and said, "You look handsome tonight, Dad.
He winked at me.
And you look like the daughter who put all this together. I'm lucky tonight." I felt something warm settle in my chest. That one sentence undid every small sting from my siblings and mother. It reminded me why I did all this. For him. Only him. We sat down together, and for a moment, I let myself believe the night would go smoothly. The lighting was soft. My father was smiling. The waiter brought water to the table, and the restaurant around us buzzed with gentle conversation. For the first 15 minutes, things actually felt peaceful. My father asked everyone about their week. Marcus joked about his boss. Denise talked about a trip she was planning. Even my mother smiled a bit, though it was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And yet, beneath the small talk, there was this quiet tension that hovered like an uninvited guest sitting between us. You know that feeling you get sometimes, when everyone is pretending things are fine even though you can see tiny cracks spreading under the surface. That's what it felt like. A fragile calm sitting on top of years of unspoken resentment. A storm nobody wanted to name. At one point, while the waiter poured wine, my mother leaned toward Marcus and said, "Your sister sure went all out. Must be trying to impress someone." She didn't whisper. She didn't hide it. She said it casually, like it was a harmless observation. But it wasn't harmless. Not to me. I sat there, staring down at my napkin, letting the words settle the way unwanted truths do. I wanted to ask her why she always had to twist everything I did into something questionable. I wanted to ask why she couldn't just say, "This is nice," or "Thank you for planning this." I wanted to ask what I ever did to make her look at me like an outsider in my own family. But instead, I let the comment pass. The same way I let 1,000 others pass before it. The appetizers arrived. Small dishes arranged beautifully, each one something I picked because I thought my father would enjoy it. And he did. He said so out loud, complimenting every flavor like he wanted to make sure I heard it. Like he knew no one else would acknowledge my effort the way he would. For a moment, his gratitude anchored me again. But then Denise started talking about how expensive everything looked. How she hoped I wasn't expecting anyone to pay their part. How I always go overboard for no reason. The storm gathered a little more. Then Marcus asked loudly, "Why didn't you just host at your place? Would have been easier." I swallowed slowly. Because my place is small. Because I wanted tonight to feel special. Because Dad deserved more than folding chairs and paper plates. Because I wanted a memory that didn't feel patched together. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I just said, I wanted to do something nice. "Yeah, well," he muttered, "next time maybe check with everyone first." I don't know what hurt more, the comment or the fact that nobody corrected him. Nobody pointed out I had paid for everything. Nobody defended me, not even for a second. And through all this, my mother sat quietly, watching me with that expression she always had when she thought I was being dramatic. The kind of look that made you question the ground under your feet. Still, I kept smiling for my father's sake. Still, I held the evening together like glue. But underneath that calm, I felt something inside me shift. Something small. Something quiet. Something that said, "Pay attention, Camille." Because the night wasn't done unraveling. The storm was still building. And the words that would break everything open hadn't even been spoken yet. I can still see that dinner table as clearly as if it were sitting right in front of me right now. The warm lights hanging above us, the soft chatter from other families in the restaurant, the candles flickering between the plates. It was supposed to be a peaceful evening. A healing one. I had planned it for weeks. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say to my father. How grateful I was for every lesson he ever taught me, how his quiet strength shaped the person I became. And for a brief moment, it actually felt like everything was going to go right. Everyone was smiling. My father was relaxed. Even my mother seemed to be in a decent mood. I remember sitting there thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this is finally the night where we all breathe the same air without tension. But life has a way of slipping the truth in at the exact moment you're trying to pretend everything is fine. It happens so fast, yet so painfully slow at the same time. I had worked with the restaurant to bring out the cake right after the main course. Something simple, something elegant, chocolate with gold dusting on the edges, because it reminded me of him. When the server dimmed the lights a little and walked over with it, everyone clapped. My father looked surprised, almost boyish in his smile. That alone made the whole evening worth it for me. I stood up with the cake knife in my hand, feeling my heart beat right up in my throat. I was nervous, but it was a good kind of nervous. The kind you feel when you're about to say something that matters. I looked at him, and for a second, all I saw was the man who held my hand when I was little, the one who fixed my broken toys, the one who stayed up late helping me study for tests I was terrified of. I opened my mouth to speak. Dad. I just wanted to. Before I could finish, before I even got halfway through the first sentence, I heard my mother's voice slice through the moment like a cold knife. Oh, please, she said with a little laugh. You're not even part of this family. It didn't sound like a joke. It didn't sound playful. It sounded like something she had been waiting to say, like it had been sitting on her tongue for years, just looking for a crack to slip through. The table went silent. The whole restaurant seemed to follow. Even the server froze. I felt the words hit me before I could fully understand them, like someone had punched me right in the chest. I blinked, trying to keep my face steady, but I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes. That burning feeling that always hits right before tears spill over. My siblings didn't say anything. Not a single one of them. My brother looked down at his plate. My sister lifted her glass and took a sip of water, her eyes avoiding mine like I was a stranger they barely knew. And, in that moment, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't angry, not then. I was something worse. I was hurt in a way I hadn't been hurt since I was a teenager, standing in the doorway of my mother's room, wondering why she always treated me differently. All those old feelings started creeping back, crawling up from places I thought I'd buried them. My father was the only one who reacted. He didn't speak right away, but he looked at my mother with a disappointment I'd only seen a few times in my entire life. His eyes softened when he turned back toward me. Camille, he whispered, like he was trying to hold me together with just his voice. But it was too late. The moment was broken. Split open. Exposed for what it really was. Every hope I had pinned on that night evaporated inside me. I swallowed hard, set the cake knife down, and forced myself to breathe. I didn't want to cry in front of them. I had cried enough in my life behind closed doors. I wasn't giving them that again. Excuse me, I said softly. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. I walked toward the restroom, but I didn't go in. I just stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, letting the tears finally fall. Not loud tears. Not dramatic ones. Just quiet drops that slid down my face like they had been waiting for years to finally be allowed out. I could hear laughter from another table, a family celebrating something. I wondered if they knew how lucky they were. How precious it was to sit together without fear of being humiliated or diminished. When I wiped my face and looked at myself in the mirror of a decorative panel nearby, I barely recognized the woman staring back. I saw someone tired. Someone who had carried too much for too long. Someone who kept giving grace to people who never offered any back. I took a few more minutes to breathe, then walked back to the table. I didn't look at anyone except my father. His eyes were glossy, like he'd been holding back his own pain. "You okay?" he whispered. I gave him a small nod. I knew he wanted to say more, but he knew what kind of scene would unfold if he tried. That's the thing about my father. He's gentle, but he's also lived a lifetime next to a woman who always needed to have the last word. He knew what battles were worth picking, and which ones would destroy the whole night. The food was already cold by the time I sat down. Nobody spoke. Not even my mother. Maybe she realized she crossed a line. Or maybe she didn't care. I'll never know. But that silence, thick enough to cut, told me everything I needed to hear. For years, I had been trying to earn something that should have been mine already, belonging. Not praise, not attention, just the simple acknowledgement that I was part of the family I kept pouring myself into. And in one sentence, she told me I never really was. After dinner ended, everyone got up slowly. My siblings hugged my father. My mother adjusted her purse. No one approached me. No one apologized. No one asked if I was okay. But my father lingered. When he finally reached me, he touched my arm with a tenderness that nearly broke me all over again. "Camille," he said softly, "I saw everything." That's all he said. He didn't have to say more. Those words wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket. For the first time that night, I felt something close to steady. I drove home alone in the dark, the streetlights blurring through my tears. I kept replaying the moment in my head, over and over. The shock in the air, the silence around the table, my father's hurt face. It wasn't just the comment itself. It was everything behind it. All the years of distance. All the years of me trying to fix and hold and carry. All the years of pretending her coldness was normal. Somewhere between one traffic light and the next, I whispered to myself, something has to change. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. Pure clarity. For the first time in my life, I realized I couldn't keep shrinking myself just to fit into a place that was never made for me. I went to bed that night with swollen eyes and a tightness in my chest, but beneath all that hurt, something new was forming. Something steady, quiet, and powerful. A beginning. And that's where everything truly started to shift. The morning after that dinner felt heavier than I expected. I woke up with that strange fog you get when something painful happened the night before, and for a split second, your mind tries to protect you by pretending nothing happened. Then it all rushes back like cold water. My mother's voice. My siblings' silence. My father's sad eyes. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the sunlight pushing through the curtains. Even the house felt quieter than usual, almost like it was waiting to see what I would do next. Part of me thought my phone would buzz any minute, maybe a text from my sister, maybe my brother trying to check in, maybe even my mother offering some half-hearted explanation. Hours passed. Nothing. Around lunchtime, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, telling myself, maybe they're giving me space. Maybe they're still processing everything that happened. Maybe this would be one of those moments families sometimes have. Messy at first, but healing once everyone calms down. But as the day faded into evening, that hope got smaller and smaller. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't reach out first. Not this time. I had spent most of my life being the one who fixed things. The one who soothed tension. The one who took responsibility even when I had no business carrying someone else's burden. This time, I needed to see what they would do without me stepping in. By the third day, I got my answer. My sister finally called, but it wasn't what I expected.
She didn't ask how I was.
She didn't mention the dinner. She didn't even say she was sorry. Her first words were, "Mom thinks you overreacted." Just like that. No pause.
No breath.
No softness. I held the phone to my ear, stunned. Overreacted? I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it sounded so familiar. I had heard that word all my life whenever I tried to stand up for myself. Whenever I hinted that something hurt me, whenever I needed just a little bit of support, I asked her, "Do you honestly believe that?" After what she said, my sister sighed, the kind of sigh people use when they're about to dismiss your feelings completely. "Camille, you know how Mom is. She didn't mean it that way." I closed my eyes, feeling that old ache grow behind my ribs. Then what way did she mean it? Silence. Not thoughtful silence, defensive silence. The kind that tells you someone isn't interested in understanding you, they're just waiting for you to stop being inconvenient. Eventually, she mumbled something about stress and menopause, even though my mother hadn't been in menopause for nearly 2 decades, and then she quickly changed the subject, like we were discussing bad weather instead of an emotional wound she watched happen. Before we hung up, she said, "Try not to make this a big thing." I stared at the phone long after the line went dead.
Try not to make this a big thing.
Try not to feel the hurt. Try not to exist too loudly. That was the theme of my whole childhood, tucked into a single careless sentence. Overreacted. Too sensitive. Too emotional. These were the labels I wore while I was busy holding everyone else together. Later that week, I heard from my brother, the one who sat beside me at the dinner table and stared at his plate like I was a waitress causing a scene. He didn't call. He texted. One line. "You good?" 2 words. No context. No acknowledgement. No apology. I stared at that message and felt something shift inside me again, this time deeper. That hollow space you feel when someone who should love you acts like checking on you is a chore. I typed back, "I'm fine," because I didn't have the energy to teach him how to show empathy. Not anymore. But the person I waited for, my mother, never called. Not on day 3. Not on day 5. Not on day 10. It was like nothing had happened. Or maybe like it had happened exactly the way she wanted. I tried to keep myself busy. Work, chores, errands, but everything felt muted, like life was running in low volume. I kept replaying her words in my head. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't turn them off. "You're not even part of this family." I had heard versions of that sentiment my whole life. Sometimes subtle, sometimes sharp. When I was a girl, it came out in comparisons. Why couldn't I be more like my sister, softer, sweeter, more agreeable? In my 20s, it came out when I went off to college instead of staying close to home like everyone expected. In my 30s, it came out in the form of guilt. Why wasn't I as available as she wanted? Why didn't I sacrifice my dreams for the family the way she thought I should? But this time she didn't dress it up. She didn't hide it behind tone or implication. She said the quiet part out loud, and no one corrected her. For years, I had built my identity around being dependable, someone my father could trust, someone my siblings could lean on, someone my mother didn't have to worry about. I convinced myself that being the strong one meant I didn't need anything in return. I could handle the weight. I could carry everyone's burdens. But sitting in my quiet house that week, I realized something I never let myself say before. Strength shouldn't mean invisibility. The more silent my family became, the more I could finally hear my own thoughts, thoughts I'd buried, ignored, or drowned out with responsibilities. I thought about the times I drove across town late at night to help my sister after a breakup. The times I lent my brother money he never paid back. The birthdays I planned. The holidays I cooked. The emotional fires I put out one after another, year after year. And then I thought about all the times I needed something, real help, real care, real support, and how quickly everyone disappeared. How my mother brushed off my struggles like they were inconveniences. How my siblings leaned on me, but never stood beside me. The more silent I became, the clearer things became. One evening, about a week after the dinner, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and lavender. I felt tired, but not the same tired I had known before. This was the kind of tired that comes right before clarity. For the first time, I said the truth out loud, even if no one else could hear it. "I'm done trying to earn a place I never actually had." The words surprised me. They felt bold, almost rebellious, but they also felt right, like something inside me had finally snapped into alignment. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the dinner. I didn't wait for anyone to reach out. I just sat with myself, quiet and still, letting years of confusion unravel, letting old wounds breathe, letting the silence show me the truth I had been too loyal, too hopeful, too afraid to see. I didn't know exactly what would come next. I didn't know how my family would react when I stopped being their fixer. But I did know one thing with absolute certainty. Something inside me had shifted, and there was no going back. And as strange as it felt, that shift didn't scare me. It comforted me. Because for once, I wasn't trying to hold everyone together. I wasn't trying to be perfect or patient or endlessly understanding. I was finally listening to myself. And that was the beginning of everything that came next. In the days after I pulled away from my family, my life felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. Like a storm had passed, but the cleanup hadn't begun yet. I didn't call anyone, didn't offer help, didn't jump in to manage anyone's stress. I just stopped. And for a while, it was like the universe didn't know what to do with me. But then, almost as if on cue, the moment arrived that would force everything into the open. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone started ringing nonstop. At first, I let it buzz across the table while I washed dishes. I figured it was another group chat I didn't feel like joining. Then the calls started repeating, my sister, then my brother, then both of them again within minutes. I remember drying my hands slowly, staring at the screen as if it was a stranger knocking at my door. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear, not resentment, just a simple awareness. They don't call like this unless they need something. When I finally answered, my sister didn't even say hello. "We need your help," she said, breathless, like she was running toward a burning building. I exhaled softly. "Of course. What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady. She launched into the story, so fast I could barely keep up. My brother had invested in something risky, something he didn't fully understand, and the money was gone. Not a little money. A lot of it. Money he needed. Money he didn't have. And just like that, they expected me to fix it. "We know you've always been responsible," she said, her voice shaky. "You're the only one who can help him get through this." There it was again. The same role, the same script, the same assumption. Always dependable, always available, always ready to sacrifice. I didn't agree, though. I didn't make any promises.
I didn't even respond.
I just sat there, holding the phone, listening to the same people who couldn't offer me a single kind word after that dinner, now asking for financial salvation. My brother texted next. "Please, Cam. I messed up. I need you. I'll pay you back.
I swear."
Promises he'd made a dozen times before. I put the phone down, stood by the window, and watched a pair of birds settle onto the tree outside. They pecked gently at the branches, unbothered by anything except the breeze. It hit me then how simple their lives were, how uncomplicated, how free. Meanwhile, I was still standing in the same emotional hallway I'd been trapped in my whole life, waiting for someone else to open a door for me. I picked up the phone and called my sister back. She answered before the first ring even finished. "Camille? Oh, thank God. Listen, we really need—" "I'm not helping," I said quietly. The line went completely still. Not silent, still. Like the world had tilted. "What?" she finally whispered. "I'm not helping," I repeated. "Not this time." She tried to laugh, but it was shaky. "Come on, Cam. Don't do this."
"Not now."
"I'm not doing anything," I said softly. "That's the point." There was a long pause, and then she snapped back into her usual tone, the sharp one she used whenever she felt she was losing control. "You're seriously going to leave us hanging? After everything we've done for you?" That sentence would have hurt me once. Maybe even shattered me. But now it just felt like an old song I'd outgrown. "What have you done for me?" I asked, my voice calm, not accusing, just honest. "Really? When have any of you been there for me the way I've been there for all of you?" Another long silence. She tried to come up with something. I could hear her searching for a memory for a moment, for any proof that she'd been the kind of sister she claimed to be. But she couldn't find anything. Because it wasn't there. You're being dramatic, she said at last. No, I replied, still steady. I've been silent for a long time. That's different. Then I told her the truth I had swallowed for decades. All my life, I've been the one picking everyone up, covering bills, fixing emergencies, carrying emotional weight, being the strong one because nobody else wanted to be. But when I needed help, real help, none of you were there. Not after the divorce. Not during the health scares. Not even after Mom humiliated me in front of an entire restaurant. She inhaled sharply, like I'd thrown cold water on her. You're still on that? Yes, I said. Because you never even acknowledged it. I could feel my heart beating, but it wasn't fear this time. It was release. You didn't defend me, I continued. You didn't check on me. You didn't care how much it hurt. You just waited for things to go back to normal, so I could keep being the one you all lean on. My sister didn't respond. She didn't argue, didn't deny, didn't apologize. She just breathed into the phone like someone realizing the ground beneath them was shifting. Then my brother joined the call. My sister must have looped him in. He launched straight into a desperate explanation, talking fast, piling excuses, begging me not to give up on the family. I closed my eyes and pictured that restaurant again. The cake. My father's eyes. My mother's voice cutting into me like a blade. I didn't give up on the family, I said. The family gave up on me a long time ago. My sister tried again. Camille, we're family. You can't just walk away. I'm not walking away, I said gently. I'm just stepping out of the role you put me in. The one where I'm useful, but never valued. Needed, but never loved. Present, but never seen. My brother fell silent. My sister exhaled sharply. So, you're really not helping him?
No, I said.
I'm choosing my peace this time.
And I meant it.
Every word. Every breath. Not because I wanted to punish them. Not because I loved them any less. But because I finally loved myself enough to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to bandage a wound. For the first time in decades, I wasn't the one scrambling. I wasn't the one fixing. I wasn't the one apologizing. The call ended without resolution. No hugs, no apologies, no "I love you." Just a stunned silence from both of them, as if they were staring at a version of me they didn't recognize. After I hung up, I stood in the middle of my living room and took a long breath. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was from something that felt like freedom trying to settle into my bones. Later that evening, I made myself a simple dinner, roasted vegetables, a little rice, nothing fancy. I played soft music, lit a candle, and sat in the stillness of my own home. My own air. My own quiet. Nobody barged in. Nobody needed saving. Nobody demanded pieces of me I couldn't afford to give anymore. As I ate, I realized this was the first time in years that a crisis hit my family, and I wasn't part of the cleanup crew. I wasn't the emotional firefighter. I wasn't the dependable backbone. I was just Camille, and that felt new, uncomfortable, but unbelievably right. When I went to bed that night, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't replay the conversation in my head. I didn't wonder if I was being too harsh or too distant. I felt something else.
Steady. Clear.
Strong in a way that didn't require me to carry anyone else. This was the first step. The first boundary. The first time I chose myself over chaos. And deep down, I knew it wouldn't be the last. After I told my siblings no for the first time in my life, the world didn't fall apart the way I once feared it would. The sky didn't crack open. The earth didn't shift beneath my feet. Instead, life became strangely still and somehow softer. At first, I didn't know what to do with that kind of quiet. I was so used to being on call, always waiting for someone else's crisis, always bracing myself for the next emotional fire. Without that weight pressing on me, I felt unsteady, almost like a bird learning how to stand after years of flying nonstop. But slowly, very slowly, I started filling the silence with things that were actually mine. I began reaching out to people I had drifted away from. Old coworkers, women from church, a neighbor I used to talk to before life swallowed me whole. Not everyone responded, but enough did that I started to feel the corners of my world widening again. Sometimes we met for coffee. Sometimes we just talked on the phone and shared little bits of our lives. And sometimes we sat in silence together, and even that felt like healing. One afternoon, I visited the community center near my house, a place I had driven past for years but never stepped inside because I always had someplace else to be. They had a small financial literacy group for older women, most of them retired or transitioning out of long careers. I showed up thinking I'd just sit in the back and listen. Instead, I found myself sharing ideas, answering questions, offering suggestions, and realizing how much knowledge I'd been carrying around without ever using it for myself. They invited me back the next week. And the next. After a while, I started looking forward to those meetings the way a child looks forward to recess, like it was a breath of fresh air I didn't know I'd been missing. My father, and I found our own rhythm too. I began visiting him privately, without the noise and interference of the rest of the family. Sometimes we sat on his porch with mugs of tea. Sometimes we walked slowly around his yard. Sometimes we talked, and sometimes we didn't. But I could feel something settling between us, something warm and old and comforting, like a quilt handed down through generations. One morning, as we sat under his pecan tree, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "You didn't deserve what happened that night," he said, his voice quiet but steady. I should have said something then. I'm saying it now. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until my throat tightened. I squeezed his hand back. "I know," I whispered. "And I'm okay." He looked at me the way only a parent can, like he could see all the years behind me, every bruise, every burden. "You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for." I don't know why that sentence hit me the way it did. Maybe because he said it without expecting anything from me. Maybe because it was the first time in a long time that a family member didn't follow praise with a request. Maybe because those words, simple as they were, felt like someone was finally handing me back pieces of myself I'd lost over the years. After that day, spending time with him became part of my routine, but in a gentle, simple way. No obligations. No family drama. Just two people who cared about each other, sharing time without anyone else pulling at the edges. A few months passed before my siblings reached out again. It didn't happen dramatically. There was no big apology, no speech, no tears. Just small things at first. My brother sent a short text. "Hope you're okay." My sister left a voicemail that sounded more nervous than angry. Weeks later, my brother asked if we could talk. My sister followed. Not with demands. Not with expectations. Just quiet, hesitant attempts to reconnect. The first time they knocked on my door, I didn't rush to answer. I opened it slowly, leaving the chain on, not because I wanted to shut them out, but because I wanted to protect the peace I had fought so hard to find. They stood there on my porch, shifting awkwardly. They looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I was just seeing them with clearer eyes. My sister spoke first. "We didn't handle things right," she murmured. "Any of it." My brother nodded. "We were used to you always fixing things. We didn't realize how much we leaned on you." I listened. I didn't rescue them from their discomfort. I didn't soften the edges. I let their words sit in the air, real, raw, a little messy. When they finally lifted their eyes to meet mine, I said the one thing I had spent months working up the courage to speak. "I'm not angry anymore, but things have to be different." And for the first time in my life, I saw it. They heard me. Not because they agreed with everything I'd said, not because they suddenly changed overnight, but because I spoke from a place I'd never spoken from before, firm, grounded, steady. We talked for a few minutes on the porch. Nothing heavy. No deep confessions. Just a small step forward. A cautious, uncertain bridge. When they left, I closed the door gently and leaned against it. Not overwhelmed. Not shaken, just proud. For years, I thought strength meant holding everyone up. Turns out, real strength was learning when to stand on my own. My life didn't magically transform after that. Bills still came. Some days I felt lonely. Some nights I laid awake replaying old memories that still stung. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a tide, always pulling back and swirling around your feet before it finally recedes for good. But little by little, I built something that felt real. I spent afternoons reading on my couch, the sun spilling across the rug. I called old friends. I took slow walks at the park, listening to the wind move through the trees. I learned to cook again, not rush dinners for anyone else, but small meals I actually enjoyed. I went to the community group every Thursday. I laughed more. I slept better. I breathed deeper. And most importantly, I stopped waiting for my family to make space for me. I made space for myself. One evening, near the end of summer, I carried a glass of iced tea out to my balcony. The air was warm, the sky painted in soft strokes of gold and lavender. Cars hummed in the distance, a dog barked somewhere down the street, and a gentle breeze lifted the edge of the blanket I had draped over my legs. I leaned back, letting my body settle into the chair, and watched the sun slip lower and lower, casting a soft glow over everything. It was such a simple moment, such an ordinary moment, but something in my chest opened, like the world was finally exhaling with me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. Not to the family I had spent my whole life trying to hold together. Not to the expectations that had shaped me into someone exhausted and invisible. Not to the old patterns of fixing, proving, rescuing. I belonged to myself. And that was enough. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.